Now that we are diving into research more and more, let's talk about what synthesizing sources mean. Recommend you have your book with you with this lecture, and what the book meaning the Norton Field Guide book. Go ahead and read, if you want, pause the video and read that first paragraph in chapter 50 of the Norton Field Guide book about synthesizing ideas. Pause the video, read it, and jump back to the video. Synthesizing, this is from that chapter in Norton Field Guide, brings together materials from two or more sources. You have to have more than one source in order to synthesize, in order to generate new information or to support a new perspective. You need to use what they say to inspire and support what you want to say. So think about your argument research essay that you are going to develop for weeks 3, 4, and 5. You ask yourself, what do you want to say in this paper? You have to find sources to validate your argument and boost your credibility as a communicator. So let's talk about synthesizing a little bit more. The information you find, you need 4 or more sources for this research paper. So the information you find in all those sources are organized in a way so they support your argument, support your reasons for the argument. You use information from the sources to prove the observations you make. Review the 3 samples in the Norton Field Guide book, chapter 50. The information highlighted is what the author would use in their own paper. That's how they're synthesizing that information into their own, that they would use for their own work. The majority of your paper is your own writing that discusses the topic that you're arguing in favor of or against of. But you use evidence from your sources to prove your point, and when and how you use those evidence to support your reasons is synthesizing. So this is just an example of using a source in a paper. Say one paper was about men being victims. They were arguing that men are also victims. So the information that you see underlined and in yellow are 2 different sources. And everything written in white is the author's own writing. They're talking in their own opinion about men being victims. Then they break away from their writing and introduce 2 different sources. Them using those 2 different sources and when they use it is synthesizing. And they're direct quotes because you see the quotation mark here, and then we see the in-text citation as well. And then you don't want a back-to-back quote, so keep writing in your own words about what it is you're discussing, and then introduce either something else from this source or a new source. And synthesizing when and how and where to use your sources is why research takes a little bit of time. So let's look at a second sample. So pretend this was an entirely different argument paper about the dangers of male subgroups. This is just based on a sample, but again, information underlined and highlighted in yellow is from a source. Everything else is the author's own words. So this is another source, and this is a different source. These are both direct quotes. Remember, you can direct quote or you can paraphrase something. But just looking at these 2 samples, there's more white font than yellow font. So majority of your writing is your own words. You just use sources to reinforce and boost your argument or your observations. Remember that there are 2 ways to use information from sources. Direct quote, the information from the source is taken word for word and placed directly in your paper. You absolutely have to use quotation marks for direct quotes because it's your way of telling the audience that this isn't your wording, but it's from the original source. It absolutely needs an APA in-text citation to prove the source was used. Otherwise, the author would have no idea where the information is coming from. So if we take a look at what's underlined right here and we wanted to use it as a direct quote, we have the author, the year, quotation mark. They've introduced the quote here. As noted by Squirrel 2018, quote, matches this exactly. And then there wasn't a page number on this source, so you just put paragraph number. It came from paragraph 2. And that would be a way to avoid plagiarism and boost your credibility. Paraphrases, of course, are also excellent ways. You just have to be a little more careful of paraphrases, that it doesn't match the wording too much, that it's not too similar. Regardless, you don't need quotation marks for a paraphrase because you're writing it in your own words, but you still need an APA in-text citation because you have to give credit. So if I wanted to summarize the point of this paragraph, this would be my paraphrase, and then you get rid of the page or paragraph number since it's not directly word for word. And again, remember, you can either do the entire citation at the end of a sentence here, or you can do it at the beginning here. And I just answered my own question. So I have a silly sample. There are two ways to use APA in-text citations. Again, at the very end, or you can introduce it at the beginning. So pretend I published a book saying, then there's a sentence that said, English 301 is the best class ever, because I know you all wholeheartedly agree to that statement. This is an example of a direct quote, right? Because we see the quotation marks and the page number that it's noted on. If I wanted to, I could paraphrase it. States that students in English 1301 are enrolled in a class that will benefit their writing, summarizing the point of it being the best class ever. And just a final note, always follow the author's last name, year, page, paragraph number format for APA. Get rid of page and paragraph number if it's a paraphrase. And again, it just depends on the source types that you're using. There might not be an author, so you replace the author's last name with the title of the source, or the title of the page that the information is on. If there's not a date, that might happen too. Use the word n.d.no date where the date goes. There's a sample. No author, no year. Combine these two. And this is cut off, it looks like a little bit on my screen, but it shouldn't be for you. If no page, count the paragraph number that the sentence is from for direct quotes only. You don't need those for a paraphrase. And follow my templates. There's a website called Purdue OWL. Excellently gives APA advice, and they update it constantly because APA gets updated a lot. So a Purdue OWL APA. Make sure you're in the APA section of that website. Always updates everyone with new information.